The college football playoff, ladies and gentlemen, is not the sport. It's a part of the sport. You may have been convinced that it is the sport because national championships are, according to many, the only thing that decides whether a coach or a program is successful. But alas, the college football playoff is just a part of the sport. It's not the sport in its entirety. It is a vehicle. And many have argued for continued college football playoff expansion. In the past, still now, although I think some are now aware, painfully aware of some of the consequences of college football playoff expansion, but the advocates for it say that it will create equality of opportunity. I just saw Boise State's athletic director, for example, say that the new policy of straight seeding should be called the Boise State policy because you're denying Boise State what should be theirs. I mean, he's assuming that Boise State deserves a bye week on top of getting invited to the college football playoff. And what I will say to Boise State's athletic director is you are lucky and you are fortunate and you are blessed that the SEC and Big Ten are merciful gods that are letting you even play with their teams because you don't belong on the same field. Just to be frank and honest. It's not saying that Boise State isn't a proud program. They are. They're, in fact, one of the most successful programs and one of the best, if not the best, success story in college football of the 21st century. They do not have the talent. They do not have the resources, the TV deal, the backers, whether that's in terms of boosters or the funding, the fundraising that the athletic director can do, any type of resources. They do not measure up to the Big Ten or SEC. Boise State is here. Those conferences are, extending all the way beyond the screen. The ACC and the Big 12 are here. I mean, the ACC and the Big 12, at least the ACC for sure, is closer to the SEC and the Big 10, who are the two titans of the sport, than they are to Boise State. And if you take Boise State's conference, the Mountain West, well, the disparity is even worse because Boise State is the best program in the Mountain West by a mile. They'll be joining the Pac-12 in 2026, but that's beside the point. We're not here to talk about Boise State or go off on that tangent. The point I'm trying to make is Boise State was never going to win the college football playoff last year. Arizona State, maybe a little bit more likely because their roster's more talented, better, and it's more important to have a near-elite QB than a generational running back, typically. But they weren't going to win it all. Even Clemson last year, Clemson was not going to win it all, and Clemson had a top 5 talent roster last year. It just goes to show how quickly, when you look at all 130-plus FBS programs, how quickly hierarchies form. Traditionally in college football, in the 2010s, which was the peak of stacking roster talent, you really only had 2 or 3 teams per given year that were able to win it all because they were just so much better than everyone else. Even if there was a 4th or 5th or 6th team that were near elite and maybe if they caught some luck, well, they could have at least won a semifinal game, they were ultimately going to fall to one of the top 3. 2 or all 3 of them made the 4-team playoff every year, and that team was going to win it all. It's why, in my humble opinion, if the 12-team playoff format expanded back to 2014 or extended back to 2014, I think Clemson still wins both of its natties. I think that Alabama wins its natties. None of those dynasties are changed because the talent they had and the coaching they had. I think LSU still wins it in 19. Alabama still wins it in the COVID year. I think Georgia still wins it in 21. I think that Michigan still wins it in 23. I think that in 2022, it either would have been Ohio State or Georgia who would have won it all. Maybe Michigan, maybe. I think 2022 is maybe one of the more balanced years at the top, but still, I think it would have been Georgia or Ohio State. I think that you go back to the first year of the playoffs' existence in 2014, I think it is Ohio State, TCU, Oregon, or, kind of a bold opinion of mine, Michigan State. So you still have the original national champion that year in Ohio State, who would have been the 4 seed, would have gotten a first-round bye under whether it was the 2024 or 2025 system. They would have gotten a first-round bye as they were a top 4 seed in the final rankings, or a top 4 ranked team in the final college football playoff rankings, pardon me, still would have been in the running, still would have been one of the favorites. So this is where I understand people like Josh Pate, for example, who either preferred the BCS or liked the 4-team playoff how it was. Typically, your teams in the top 4 of power ratings, who before super conferences were going to be ranked in the final top 4 anyway, usually those teams were the teams who were going to win it all. Ohio State, even after their loss to Michigan, top 4 in all power ratings, unanimously. Georgia in 2021, after Alabama blew them out, was still number 1 unanimously in power ratings. When I hear people say that the 12-team college football playoff expanded the opportunity for new teams to win it all, when I hear them say, oh, but we just need to move it to 14 or 16, which, to be fair, I don't see as many people saying that as I used to see, but still, there's that argument. 21 teams have made the college football playoff. Only 12, 10-2, 12 have won a game, at least a game, and only 6 have won a title. And you know how many of those 6 came from the traditional Power 4? Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, Georgia. That was viewed as the top 4 basically since Kirby Smart's been hired at Georgia. Clemson's fallen off a little bit, but they're still viewed as the ACC's premier program, and Clemson was viewed in that top 4, I think, every year sort of in the playoff scope, the 4-team playoff scope, from 2015 when they made it the first time to, I'd say, 2021, 2022. Some even had them pegged in there in 2023. These are the 4 best programs of the playoff era in totality: Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, Georgia. They have combined for a total of, Alabama has 9 wins, Clemson has 6, Ohio State has 7. So right off the bat, that's 22. Georgia has 5, which is 27. That is 27 total victories to those 4 teams. The rest of the field who've won a game, or who haven't, the rest of the field, so that's 4 teams have accounted for 27 wins. 4 teams out of the 21 who've made it. The other 17, Notre Dame's had 3, Michigan's had 2, Texas with 2, Washington and Oregon with 1 each, LSU with 2, Penn State with 2, and TCU with 1. That right there, that's 14. The rest of the field, the other 17 teams have only combined for 14 wins, while your top 4 teams of the CFP era have combined for 27. And they have won it, those teams, Alabama 3 times, thrice, Clemson twice, Ohio State twice, Georgia twice. They have won it 9 times. The other champions outside that field, Michigan in 23, LSU in 19, both of whom were elite teams and some of the better teams of the entire 21st century, LSU being a GOAT caliber team. So I don't want to hear it when people say that the college football playoff can expand the opportunity for a team to win it all. If you're talking about a team reaching the postseason, absolutely, the playoff expands for equality of opportunity. But you have to accept the consequences of that too. The consequences being your season will end in a loss. If you're Boise State, it'll end in a blowout loss, most likely. Same if you're a team like Clemson, who was clunky for much of the year, had some talent, but if Texas was just able to put their foot off the gas or keep it there, like Ohio State last year was able to for the entire playoffs, that game is not a 14-point loss. It's a 28-35 point loss. It looked exactly like Tennessee or Oregon when they played Ohio State and got utterly annihilated. And that hurts. That can hurt a team. I mean, no one's talking about Oregon being a title contender in 2025. You know why that is? Because Ohio State beat them 41-21, and it was 34-8 at halftime. It completely deflated how people viewed their season. Now, for a resilient program like Oregon, a team with talent, a team with elite coaching, they'll likely bounce back from that. But let me tell you, those losses can sometimes destroy a team. That can sometimes be the game where your program gets kicked in and the rot's exposed and you don't recover. Think of Florida State under Jimbo Fisher when they made the playoffs and Oregon killed them, or Michigan State in 15. The years following weren't so good. I mean, think of, I don't know. Think of Tennessee. Think of Tennessee. Do you think that Tennessee is just going to immediately bounce back from that? Those playoff wins and losses can change the perception of programs for recruits, for donors. I mean, we know this from regular season games. Michigan State, for example, school up the road from me. My parents are Spartan fans, and my dad got his master's from Michigan State. He would feel a lot better about his program, Michigan State, if they only lost to Rutgers by 7 or beat them rather than losing to them by 30 points. So you have to accept the consequences of CFP expansion as well. That instead of Boise State winning a New Year's Six Bowl and gaining some momentum entering the following year, instead they suffer a humiliating defeat in the quarterfinals, are kind of forgotten, and they don't necessarily have the same momentum entering the following year. Of course, momentum can sometimes be perception and only perception. Other times it's very meaningful. The point I'm trying to make is that when only 6 of the 21 teams that have made it in terms of programs, only 6 of the 21 teams that have made it have won a title, only 12 have won a game, and out of the 6 teams who won a title, 4 of them are responsible for 9 of the titles, and the other 2 are responsible for 1 each. That is unequal. Very unequal, especially when you look at the Alabama and Clemson and Ohio State teams who won it. When you look at 2019 and the fact that if 2019 Clemson or Ohio State were in any other year of college football, those teams probably win it all because that year was unevenly and unequally better than any of the years surrounding it. Way better than 18, way better than 2020 in terms of quality. You begin to realize that really the college football playoffs' only argument for expansion is more games, is more entertainment, is to make it a better TV product. And then maybe once in a while you get a Cinderella story of, instead of Oregon in 2023 being left out with 2 losses, they get in, they get hot, and maybe they make a run. Maybe in 2014, you get a 1-loss TCU team, a 1-loss team that maybe wins the ACC or the Big 12 that's really good, would have been left out of the 4-team model because of a weak strength of schedule, and they get hot, and they get rolling, and they win it all. But that's not going to be the norm. That's not even going to be close to the norm. Many of the rules that applied for the 4-team playoffs and even the BCS, the blue chip ratio rule, the fact that the teams toward the top in talent typically win it all, the teams towards the top in coaching usually win it all, resources really matter. Those things are going to remain. And I think that argument's simple, but there are many who disagree with me. And I just want to say that the way to solve inequality in the sport is revenue sharing. It's making sure that you can accurately assess for a team's strength of record and strength of schedule. And to a certain degree, some of the inequalities in college football is what makes it a beautiful sport. I mean, think of Texas Tech. Texas Tech, if their donors continue to get involved and pour in money to that program, that's going to be an inequality in college football that will be a pretty sweet story. It'll be sweet that Texas Tech has all this money and they're purchasing these good players, and maybe that allows them to win a playoff game or consistently reach the playoff. And the fact that they did it, and let's say Arizona didn't, and Arizona eventually is a dumpster fire, not saying it will be, but just as an example, that creates like awesome what-if scenarios and fun hypotheticals and areas for debate. Let's not try to make college football into something that it isn't. Let's accept it for what it is and try and use tools and vehicles like the college football playoff or whatever postseason format you want, and tools like name, image, and likeness and roster restrictions or coaching staff restrictions or lack thereof to make the sport better, rather than trying to use those to inherently change the sport when you can try all you want and maybe you'll succeed in some degree at engineering it. But at the end of the day, college football is college football, and you're not going to make the sport better by trying to make it something that it isn't.